I can't hear anyone again. Are you still talking?
It's not
Everybody hear
talking.
me?
Okay, we can now hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I was saying that interest rates is the the amount at which a lender will likely collect or get from you in order to. Can you see my screen? Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So it is the compensation that is required by the what? By the borrower, because of the time value of money and all of that. So every company pays interest in as much as you find yourself doing business with the bank, you get loan, even we ourselves, for those of us that do business, you borrow somebody money, you charge interest and all of that. So is something that is, you need to be on top of it and you need to know how it works. Else, you might not be a good negotiator on behalf of your company. And once you are not, maybe you find yourself in a department that you have to liaise with, a lot of other divisions, other companies, banks, and all of that. You might discover that you are making loss in most of those transactions if you are not properly equipped. So interest rate is the probability of a decline in the value of an asset arising from an unexpected gyration in interest rates. It is the risk of incurring losses or making profits as a result of the adverse or favorable movement in interest rate market. So majorly what this topic seems to take into consideration is that, the market is a speculative market. The interest rate market is a speculative market wherein you never can tell what will actually happen. Look at the foreign exchange market now. You never can tell what the price of the exchange rate will be today. It changes over time. Within seconds, the exchange rate changes. Within minutes, you can see that the price goes up, the price come down, and all of that. It changes. It's speculative in nature. It moves as a result of the invisible hand, demand and supply. And we have companies that transact all over the world. We have multinational companies that do business with companies out there. And what they use in paying is the exchange rate, interest rate. And imagine a company who wants to transact business within 3 months from now, but they are not sure of what the interest rate will be. And what companies do, companies who involve themselves in interest rate markets or foreign exchange market, is that they try as much as possible to reduce their risk, because everybody wants to take advantage. Everybody wants to ensure that the market is favorable to them, but because they have no power to control the market. They have no power to determine what the price of interest rate will be in the next 3 months. That particular month that they want to do that business, they have no power to control it. The best they can do is to hedge themselves. There's something we call hedging. The best they can do is to hedge themselves in the market. And how do you hedge yourself? You hedge yourself by going through the different hedging techniques that the market has put in place for you to minimize risk. Because if the interest rate is 10 naira today and you fail to take advantage of it, you want to wait to 3 months time, 6 months time when you will do that transaction. By the time you get to that 6 month time, the interest rate might have gone up to 100 naira. Look at the difference that you have lost. So this thing is something that you must be very, very skillful in doing. If not, you would incur a lot of losses for your company. So there are markets. So the major thing is we want to hedge our risk. We want to ensure that by the time we'll be transacting in 6 months time, we are getting the best from that market. That is why we call it interest rate risk management. We want to manage our risk. We want to ensure that, yes, we are not sure of what the market will be, but at the same time, let's ensure we get the best of it. That's majorly what this topic is all about. And I would want you guys to pay total attention to this foreign exchange transaction that we have entered. Pay total attention, please. Total attention. Now, what are the reasons for interest rates? The first reason is that the company has an asset whose market value changes whenever the market interest rate changes. The company has an asset, security, something in at stake anytime the interest rate changes. And then another reason for this market is the company is expected to make some future payments, and the amount of payment will depend on the interest rate at that time. So like I said, we have companies who do business with other companies all over the world. Companies who carry out transactions, companies who carry out activities, who buy, who import, who export, and all of that. Some of them are expected to receive some money from overseas. Some of them are also expected to pay some money to overseas clients. And the amount of money you pay is dependent on what? On the current interest rate. And that is why it is important you have experienced staff to help you manage your foreign transactions. Else, you might be incurring billions of losses if you fail to properly manage this market. And that is why it is important that professional accountants must be well equipped with foreign exchange transaction. Yes, it's not new to us, but we are not majorly familiar with it in Nigeria, except people who work in a multinational company, who have branches outside the country, who have branches outside. So you see some of these people talking about foreign exchange risk, and translation risk and all of that. All of this arises as a result of what? Foreign transactions. So it is something ICAN usually test students on, because you must know it as a professional accountant. So that's that. And another thing is some of them expect income. I've said that. And so the primary objective of interest risk management is not to guarantee a business the best possible outcome. The primary objective is not that, oh, you want to make profit. Interest rate market, you don't make profit. It's not a market where you make profit, but rather it's a market that will help you to what? Reduce your risk. So the primary purpose is not to get the best possible outcome, but to limit the level of uncertainty for businesses. You can see it's just the primary purpose is so that you can just reduce your risk. That's just the best I can put it, to reduce your risk. If not, you might be incurring more risk. That's the primary objective of the interest rate market, risk management market. Am I communicating, please? Am I communicating?
Yes.
Okay. Now there's something we call LIBOR and LIBID. Please just pay attention. We are now entering into the cocoa and the cocoa. There's something we call LIBOR. Now, LIBOR means the London Interbank Offered Rate. the London Interbank Offered Rate. It is the average interbank interest rate at which a selection of banks on the London money market are prepared to lend to one another. LIBOR comes in 7 maturities and in 5 different currencies. It is mostly monitored by participants because LIBOR interest rate is used as a benchmark or base rate by bank and other financial institutions. So if you go to, I don't know, has anybody here, maybe during the course of your work and all of that in your company, previous place, have you come across foreign exchange? Have you participated or handled any foreign exchange transaction over the counter and all of that? Has anybody here experienced such? Has anybody here? Huh?
Yes.
Who have done it? Samson, you've done it. What do you say?
Yes, we have heard about that. Is the transaction that has to do directly in the stock market over the counter.
Okay, that's nice. So you might have to understand, you might get to know more about this LIBOR. If you've done it before, it won't be something straight. So, but majorly, it's a benchmark rate that banks use in preferring the interest rates at which they will give to clients. So if you go to the bank sometimes and you want to do transaction relating to that, they will first of all confirm from what is the current market rate, what's the current LIBOR rate. So once they have that, they can now give you the what you need and proceed with your transaction. So as we proceed in the class, you see how this is being used. We also have what we call LIBID. LIBID is the London Interbank Bid Rate. It is the rate at which banks are willing to borrow euro currency deposits. Banks also borrow. They borrow. Maybe for instance, they are short of forex, or they are short of any kinds of currency and they need it. They can borrow from other banks, and the rate at which they will borrow from that other bank is being measured by the LIBID rate. So that LIBID rate is what the bank use to serve as a benchmark, for their borrowing rate. So the LIBID is always lower than what the LIBOR. So meaning that the LIBOR is higher than the LIBID. Let's quickly move ahead. Now, what are the different methods of hedging interest rate risk? We majorly have 4 different methods of hedging interest rate risk. We have the forward rate contracts, we have the interest rate futures, we have the interest rate options, and interest rate swap. Forward rate agreement or contract, interest rate futures, interest rate options, and the interest rate swap. These 4 are mostly tested all the time, so you can't escape any one of them. Now let's look at the forward rate agreement. I told you that this market is not a market for profit. It's a market rather to reduce the level of uncertainty, to reduce your risk. That's what the market is known for. So forward rate agreement, usually called FRA, is a binding contract in which 2 parties agreed on the interest rate to be paid on a notional amount at a specified future date. It's a binding contract. Let me explain what this forward rate is. For instance, now, your company wants to pay another company in the UK in 3 months' time from now. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we are following.
Okay, thank you very much. Your company wants to pay another company in the US 3 months from now, but they don't know what that interest rate would be in 3 months from now. Now, they can go to the bank today and ask the bank to enter into a forward rate agreement with the bank. That forward rate agreement is that both your company and the bank would agree on the amount that the interest rate will be in 3 months' time. Let's assume the interest rate currently now is 10 naira, but they don't know what would the interest rate will be in 3 months' time from now. Now, based on the expertise, because the bank would have individuals who are skilled in this department, they can foresee, they can forecast, based on the level of trend over time, based on the previous happenings and all of that, they can foresee and say, okay, the interest rate in 3 months' time would likely be 30 naira. Okay, they will now say, okay, let's agree on 30 naira. Both you and the bank would agree that the interest rate is 30 naira. Now, if in that 3 months' time, the interest rate is 35 naira, which is above what you guys agreed initially, is that not so? Is that not so?
Yeah.
Yes.
Your company, at that 3 months' time, that transaction will go. The bank will pay that interest rate on your behalf at 35 naira. But your company will come back and pay the bank the extra 5 naira on it. You will come back and pay the bank the extra 5 naira on it. Same also, if we agree that it will be 30 naira in 3 months' time, but in 3 months' time it's 20 naira, it's not that 30 naira. Meanwhile, I have given the bank that 3 months' time will pay the 30 naira. But I now discovered that the amount that the bank paid in 3 months' time was 20 naira, not 30 naira. The bank is going to refund 10 naira back to me. So this market is not a market for profit or loss. It's not a market for anybody to gain. It's a market to hedge risk. Are you following me, please? It's a market where we'll just hedge our risk and everybody go home smiling. No make loss, no make profit. Finish. That's just what this forward rate agreement is, or majorly interest rate markets. That's the analysis. Please, do you understand this analysis I just said? This is just how you see it in the question, though. If there is an excess, you will pay it back. If there is a shortage, you will pay. They will pay you, whichever way it is. Nobody makes loss, nobody makes profit. Am I communicating, please? So now, what are the points to note? Okay, let me point one or two here. He says that it is an agreement between two parties that want to protect themselves against future movement in interest rates. FRA is an instrument that allows the borrower or the lender to fix an interest rate that will be applied at a future date. It is not an instrument to be used to raise debt. It's not an instrument of debt. The principal amount is purely notional and is never exchanged. By entering into an FRA, the parties lock the interest rate. There's something we call interest rate lock. You lock it. But if at the end of the day, it goes beyond it, the bank will either pay you or you will pay the bank, whichever way it happens. So what are the points to note? The rates are quoted from the view of the bank. It is the bank that gives you the likely rate in 3 months' time or so. In favor of the bank, the rates are quoted. Another thing is that the bank buys at a lower rate. The bank buys, please write down this point too. The bank buys at a lower rate and sells at an higher rate. FRA are usually quoted such as 3 to 9. You can see the way it is 3 to 9, 3 times 9, 3 versus 9, all of this is still, once you see this, just know that it's FRA agreements. So the first digit represents the difference between now and the transaction date. So the first digit, which is 3 here, is saying that the time at which you would buy or when that transaction would take place is in 3 months' time. That's what that 3 is talking about. So when you see 3 to 9 or 3 versus 9, it is saying that in 3 months' time from now, that transaction will take place. Am I communicating? While the second digit denotes the difference between now and the contract maturity date. So what that is saying is that in 3 months' time, the contract would mature. I mean, the contract will start. The transaction period is in 3 months' time. That is the 3. While the 9 is that in 9 months' time, the transaction will go what? Come into maturity or completion. So the difference between the two figures indicates the length of what? Of the transaction. The party lender that wants protection from a possible decline in interest rate sells FRA. The party lender, which is your company is the one that needs the protection. So it means you will sell the interest rate to the bank, and the bank will buy from you at a lower price. The bank will buy from you at a lower price. The party borrower that is seeking protection from a possible increase in interest rate buys the what? The FRA agreement. If the actual interest rate is higher than the rate agreed, the bank pays the companies the difference, like what I explained earlier. The bank pays the company the difference. Then the other one is if it is lesser, the company pays the difference, whichever way it is. Whichever way it is. That is the FRA quotation. So you can see the quote. So what this quote is saying is 3 versus 4. It means the agreement will start in 3 months' time and it will end in 4 months from now. That's 3 versus 4. I hope everybody can see my screen.
Yes.
So it means in 3 months' time it will start, in 4 months' time it will end. While the 5.5 is the what? The 5.5 is the interest rate. The borrowing rate is the 5.5 and the lending rate is the what? 4.4. That's FRA agreement. So FRA agreement has its steps. There are steps to FRA agreement. Quickly, the number 1 is that you determine the contract period. Determine the contract period. Number 2, you determine the FRA rate. Please note this rate here. Note the meaning of this rate here. The lending rate and the borrowing rate. Note it. You determine the FRA rate. Select the higher rate for borrowing and then the lending rate, the lower rate for lending. The higher rate is always higher, which is the borrowing rate. Then the lending rate is for what? The lower rate. Then you determine the notional principal amount, NPA. Calculate the actual LIBOR or the interbank rate. Once you do that, you calculate the actual interest receipt. Actual interest receipt. Then you calculate the compensation payment. with this formula. Look at the formula there. Then you calculate the net amount. So that is that about FRA. Just note this formula. Note this formula for FRA. That is how FRA agreement is calculated. So we also have quickly, let me talk about interest rate futures. So the interest rate futures is a future contract which has interest-bearing security as the underlying asset. It is a particular type of interest rate derivative like treasury bill futures, treasury bond futures, and then the euro-dollar futures. What are the points to note under futures? Interest rate futures are legally binding contracts. They are legally binding contracts. Companies will sell futures while bank will buy futures. Please, all of these points, you must note it. All of these points, you must note it. Companies will sell futures and bank will what? Will buy futures. All short-term futures are based on borrowing or lending for a 3-month period. Futures are quoted in the form of index. Profit and losses of futures are measured in ticks. LIBOR is used to calculate interest rates. The pricing of an interest rate future contract is determined by the 3-month interest rate. So these are the steps in calculating futures, interest rate futures. So we will look at questions on this. We also have the interest rate option. We have interest rate option. They are similar, but they are different. They are similar, but they are different. All of them has their own peculiarity and their differences. So we'll look at question on each of them. And then we'll trash out any other questions relating to them. Do you have any question for me? Do you have questions for me? Do you have questions for me?
No question.
Okay, so I have dropped this material in the group. Just on the questions are there. You can go through the questions, but we'll definitely treat questions on each of them. And questions that are here they are all past questions. I think I've said that before. They are all past questions. So all these questions you are seeing, they are all taken from the pack, from past questions. You can see it. These are 15-mark questions on FRA. On FRA. There is something we call spot rate. Spot rate is the current rate. The current rate of the what? Of that particular investment. That's the spot rate. That is the rate at which that security is being sold now. Now. That's the spot rate. So don't forget, in this, what's the lending rate here? What's the interest rate here? What's the lending rate? What's the borrowing rate here? Hello?
Aye.
What's the borrowing rate here? What's the lending rate? You guys have forgotten. I said it now. I told you that the borrowing rate
The
is
borrowing
always...
rate is higher.
Eh?
You
What
said
do you
the
say?
borrowing rate is the higher one. Why the lending rate is the lower one?
Yes, thank you very much. Please, you must know all these things. These are how you are going to, by the time we enter foreign exchange and currency risk, this one is interest rate. We are still going to currency risk. If you know all these things, it will help you. The borrowing rate is always the higher rate, while the lending rate is the what? The lower rate. So in this FRA now, you should know that borrowing rate is 5.82. Lending rate is 5.59. Borrowing rate is what? 5.94. Lending rate is 5.64. So that's that about that. We'll look at questions on each of them, and then we'll move to currency risk management. But please, I want you to go back and study this material and study all what we have pointed out. We can go further by looking at each of those questions. It's very simple. The questions are very, very simple. With what I've explained so far on it, you should be able to get all you need to know in this interest rate management. So we'll stop here for today. We'll stop here for today, and then I will share the recording of, I think we have 3 recordings now together with this. I'll share it for those of us that are not around. Once I download it now, I'll share it to the group, and then you can preview it, preview all what we have said, all what we have discussed in the class, and then go and solve questions yourself. Try to solve questions yourself. Solve questions yourself. You have no time, and the questions are coming thick and thick. As the exam is approaching, you'll be faced with a lot of things every day, week in, week out now. Things are coming. And the more you leave them, the more your work becomes bulky. It's better you start studying now if you have not started. So that's that about that. So any question before we go? Question, observation, anything? All right, so in the absence of no question, let's ensure we make productive use of today, and let's have a great week ahead. Thank you, everyone.